anyway, thank you for coming. I'm Susan Palmer. I've been with BYU-I just since last year. I do, in my other job, I do actually consulting and presentations. I got my doctorate in organizational leadership, and I got my master's degree in management. So that's my background of where I am. So anyway, last Sunday was Father's Day. By raise of hands, how many had a good Father's Day? How many enjoyed that? Awesome, we did too. So for us, it was a little bit different kinds of Father's Day. So we're empty nesters now, which has been different. Last year we had a couple of kids still at home, and we also moved away, a little bit away from our kids. So we moved about an hour away from where they are, so we don't see them as much. So I asked my husband, I said, so what do you want to do for Father's Day? And he gave me the answer. I said, what do you want? He gave me the answer he always gives. He says, you know, I just really want the kids over, and I want to just, you know, have good food, and I want to have good company and just enjoy the day. And so I thought, okay, and I thought this is going to be a little different. We're in, you know, a different scenario. We actually have one daughter that lives actually in Spain right now. She's going to a university. So we have some that are spread apart. Another son that has a son of his own for the first time this year, and they sort of wanted to be together as a Father's Day. So I said, all right, so what are we going to do? So I sat and I thought, because I'm a thinker, I sat and I thought, well, what are the important aspects? What are the ingredients that I want to make sure happens at this Father's Day? And so I came up with this list. I said, in order for it to be successful, I want to make sure that my husband knew that he's appreciated, and I want to make sure that everyone was invited, that they all felt like they were welcome to come, whether they could or couldn't make it. I wanted to make sure that there was a place for everyone. So we sold our house a couple of months ago, and it was quite a big house. You know, that's where we raised our kids, and we're living in a temporary housing while my husband finishes up his bishop responsibilities over a student ward. And so we're living in a much littler house than we were. So I wanted to make sure that there was space. So where we used to be able to fit everyone around the table, now we have a little table that has 4 chairs. But I wanted to make sure that we had enough room so nobody felt like they were, you know, barging in, or they you know, couldn't make it. I wanted to make sure that there was food that everyone could eat, that all the allergies were accounted for, that the dislikes were accounted for. I wanted to make sure that it was at a time where everyone could come. Make sure that, you know, they didn't have conflicts and wanted to be at our house. And I wanted to make sure that there was an atmosphere where they felt like they were welcome and loved. So those were all of the things I decided were important. And I thought, if there's other things that happen or don't happen, then that's how it's going to be. You know, it's going to be a little bit different. But I want to make sure that these things happen in order for it to be a good event, for everybody to feel good about it, and for it to be what I considered, or what everyone would consider, successful. So how does that relate to online teams? Well, I'm sure as I was talking about it, you guys were sort of thinking, yeah, online teams are a little bit different than working in an environment where we sit next to our coworker, where we can just turn to them and say, hey, I forgot how to do this, can you tell me? Or we can, you know, walk in on Monday and say, how are we doing? You know, what'd you do for the weekend? Or Friday, what are you doing for the weekend? And we can have those bonding and naturally occurring kind of things. So one word that I would use to describe online teams, or leading online teams, would be deliberate. And we talked a little bit about that in the keynote speaker, with the keynote, is that we need to be really deliberate when we're leading teams, and even teaching online classes. We need to make sure that things are occurring, and they don't naturally occur in online situation. But we need to make sure that just because they're not naturally occurring, that they aren't able, or that they are able to occur. So the problems with an online team, I found a whole lot of statistics, and I thought, you know what, a PowerPoint is not necessarily a PowerPoint, right, unless we have statistics. So these are a little bit old. Leading a virtual workforce was great. Thanks so much. Thank you. Was done back in 2010. Thank you. Thank you. It was done back in 2010, and so the statistics are a little old. Since then, they've had, again, more deliberate kind of things and have been more successful. But if you notice, through surveys, they found that people felt like innovative behavior declines by 93%, trust falls by 83%, job satisfaction decreases 80%, role and goal clarity 62%, leader effectiveness declines by more than 50%, project results dies 50%, and organizational citizenship falls by 47%. Now those are pretty scary, right? Those are like, wow, how can we be successful if these are the kinds of things that are occurring in online teams? Like I said, again, there's been changes made and with technology, and we've just gotten smarter over time, and so these aren't quite as drastic, but all of these are still problem areas. And if you think about the teams that you're leading, you can think, yeah, or being a part of the team, you can think, yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what it takes to be a successful team. And there's 6 steps, and I'm going to go over 3 different things. So the first one is we're going to talk about what the step is. Then we're going to talk about the warning signs. And again, in the keynote, we talked about the natural man, right, saying, not a problem here, we're good. So I wanted to be sure and include warning signs so you could look at it and go, oh yeah, I sort of see that this is happening. This is something that maybe we need to pay attention to. And then we're going to talk about what do we do, right? We're going to talk about ways to implement things. So the first one, so these are what the aspects, just like I went through for Father's Day, we're also talking about what aspects are important in an online team. So relationships, trust, environment, productivity, communication, and engagement. So each of these we'll go through one at a time. So we'll start with relationships. So relationships is successful teaming depends largely on effective interaction with team members. So that means that team members need to build trust with one another. And you may think that this doesn't really matter, that everybody's doing pretty good all by themselves, and we teach different classes, or we teach, everybody's, seems to be doing okay. But the truth is if you're leading an online team, the better you get at these steps, especially relationships, the better the team is the individuals are going to perform overall. So if you create an environment where there are relationships, then you're not going to have as many problem areas in other places, because they're going to be more committed and more engaged. So warning signs, if they're not happening, team members work independently and they don't reach out to other team members to collaborate. And I know that there have been teams that I've been on that everybody, just because we didn't see each other and there really wasn't too many opportunities to collaborate, that we just work by ourselves. There also can be an us versus them mentality, and so it's, it can be like little subgroups within your group. A couple of people get along better than others, and they're like, we do things well, but they, or it can be within departments. So it's like instructors, but development, or the team leads can be like, well, we are doing, but what are those instructors doing? Or, vice versa. It's an us versus them mentality, and it causes breaks within the team that need to be repaired. So as leaders, we need to make sure that everyone is engaged, which is a hard one, engaged and communicating. So what we need to do is essentially we need to create like a water cooler kind of atmosphere, a water cooler. So you know how people sort of meet in one person's office or meet in the break room or whatever, and if 2 people are in there, then they just start chatting. And that's what we need to create in online teams as much as we can. So just like we do in our online classes, we need to introduce each other. And I know the teams that I've been a part of, that's the first thing we do at the beginning of the semester is we say, oh, this is me, this is me, this is me. But then it ends, right? So, I mean, we're like, and if you're anything like me, sometimes the names are familiar, right? But I don't remember how many kids they have. I don't remember all the details about them. So ideas that we could do would be maybe to spotlight, as leaders, we could spotlight individual people. We could, in our updates that we write, newsletter updates, we could focus on a particular individual, or we could say, such and such just had a baby, or such and such just, moved. And obviously, we don't want to share things that they don't want us to share. We don't want to be the, turn it into a gossip situation where they feel outed. So, just double check that that's an okay thing. Put it in a environment that you want. So if you ask, hey, who has something to share, maybe you'll get one or two people that are more outspoken. But what you need to do is be a little bit more proactive and actually seek out. If somebody says, hey, I'm really busy, I just sold my house, you can say, hey, can I share that? How exciting, that's so neat. Can I share that, you're moving or why you're moving? Or just take advantage of those opportunities. And again, we go back to the deliberate, make sure. Create ways to virtually celebrate successes as teams. We're all doing our SMART goals. And so we have SMART goals, and then we report on the SMART goals at the end. But I don't know how other people are doing at their SMART goals, and honestly, I don't even necessarily know what their SMART goals are. And so if we have a couple of people that are doing SMART goals, maybe we can partner them up. Maybe we can say, hey, did you realize they're doing a SMART goal on the same thing, or they did the same thing last semester? Maybe you guys want to talk. So again, very deliberate in creating a water cooler kind of effect where people are communicating, people are becoming friends. They're trying to get to where they interact more informally as opposed to, we've posted something, everyone needs to respond. Remember, in your contract, it says that you have to respond, just a little reminder, and then everybody responds, right? Then they go, oh yeah, da-da-da-da-da. And then they're like, okay, good, met my quota for whatever, the week or the month or whatever it is. So a story that I think of when I think of this and is the Tower of Babel, in that they were really working well as a team, right? Were they doing the right thing? No, absolutely not. They were making a stairway up to heaven. Absolutely the wrong thing to do, but they were really doing well at it. And so Heavenly Father said, I'm going to confound their language, which meant they couldn't communicate. And then all of a sudden, their teamwork stopped. They were no longer, because they couldn't communicate, they were no longer making progress at their goal, which they had previously been. And then they also started collecting those who could speak the same language, or those who could communicate with each other. Those people started collecting, and they sort of dispersed. So what we need to do as leaders is we need to create the same language. We need to all be speaking, and BYU-I does an amazing job of putting us together in teams that we already have, interests that are the same, and we sort of communicate the same. Obviously, it would be a different experience if we had someone from the science with someone from the religion, with someone from communication, and someone from business. We would all have to start again going, where's our commonality? But we're already in really similar situations, and so we should be able to have enough common to get along with. So there's some others. For time's sake, I'm hoping you guys will read all of them, right, yourself. And all right, so the next one is trust. And you'll hear a lot about this when you talk about online teams or in breakout sessions. There's a huge thing on trust. Basically, if there's no trust, then there's no team. And trust is one of those hard things to get when you're in an online situation. So, but trust is one of those factors statistically that differentiates high-performing teams from low-performing teams. The teams that have trust with each other are the ones that are high-performing. And so we need to, because we're working semester to semester, we need to make sure that we develop that quickly. So the warning signs are the team members don't seem to know each other very well. They don't refer to themselves as we. It's not we as a team, it's I. They don't regard each other as credible. They don't feel like if they went to a team member that they would have, good advice that they need. If they felt like they were credible, they would go to them and say, hey, can you help me? Again, if we worked on our SMART goals together, or we worked on our SMART goals as a team, not necessarily the same goal, but if we celebrated those successes, then we would understand that the others are credible and do have good information. Sometimes, if it gets too far, then they become openly negative. And I hope no one has had experience with that. So what do we do about this? Well, we need to make sure the team meets face-to-face at least early on in the team's formation. And this is really difficult and, impossible. It's nice if some people were starting and we were able to all meet together. This is great that BYU-I does this, but it's not feasible in the real life, and I know our team, not a lot of us were able to make it. But we do have opportunities to do Adobe Connect, where we can see faces, or we can, instead of just having a PowerPoint where it's just present, and everybody sits there not knowing each other, we can have icebreakers. I know our last team meeting, our team lead said, hey, let's just spend, time talking about this problem. And I got to know my team members more in that one team meeting than I have, in the last few semesters. So that was really a good idea, to just let people talk. Again, we're creating a water cooler kind of effect. Spend some time, part of the meeting, focusing on building relationships. So make sure, sometimes that means introductions. Sometimes that means you say, hey, did you know that such and such has this similarity to you? Oh, and somebody may ask a question, and it may be like, oh, such and such just did this very thing for his SMART goal. Like, what did you find? And so maybe our team, maybe as we meet as a team, maybe our responsibility, instead of to completely just, monopolize and say, all right, let me just give you information, which I realize does have to happen, but, take time to make introductions, take time to put people together to build connections. Help manage conflicts, not avoid them. That's another huge thing in teams, is that if there's a conflict, people don't have to see each other the next day, and so things just get swept under the rug and they never get resolved, but they also never get talked about ever again. They just feel like, well, I don't like them because they said this to me one time, or we disagreed on this one time. And so as a team lead, just make sure, that they make sure that they're not ignored and that conflict isn't escalated. So, and then the last one is make sure, oh, go ahead.
I just had a comment. I was just thinking of some of the things that have worked, relationship to what you said in the group teams. I remember a couple of years ago I heard a good idea that was said, I find that I have more success early on. Everybody's excited about the new semester.
Mm-hmm.
Usually if you hold an online meeting early on, pretty much everybody comes. Most people can come if they can make it. And we had a question about, we asked, what brought you to BYU-Idaho? It was interesting because everybody had a story, and everybody got to know each other a little bit as a result of the story, and it helped the entire term. Kind of brought them a little bit closer together. So that was kind of neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would love to hear those stories about other people, because they're always, I feel like God has led us to where we are. I personally feel like I saw the Lord's hands in my being here, and I think those kinds of stories, again, sort of inspire and help engage others to see those kinds of things. Good. Good. Did anyone else? Awesome. Okay, so the next one, soft skills. Soft skills are essential. So for those who don't know what soft skills are exactly, sometimes it's a little ambiguous. There's difference between hard skills and soft skills. Those are the two kinds of skills. Hard skills are your technical kinds of things that you have learned. Soft skills are basically encompass everything else. So it's communication, teamwork, time management, self-management, decision making, taking responsibility, those kinds of things. So the warning sign is that there's a high turnover. No one wants to work in a situation where, people do not possess soft skills. They also, teams work in silos, or in our situation, maybe individuals work in silos. So they don't communicate with each other. They just work by themselves, or they don't communicate with the course council. They just, get their work done and don't ever venture beyond that. So these are the things to do for that. Can you think of any stories that have been successful as far as things you've done to help with soft skills, or if there's been a problem? Obviously don't mention names, but
We had one in our
yeah.
teaching group a couple years ago where I felt in looking at through their course visits that the teachers needed to work on how they gave feedback to students, and instead of just being so demanding, and it almost seemed like we were this all-knowing fountain of information.
Yeah.
We needed to work on how we phrased feedback back to our students, and so we actually worked on that in one of our teaching group meetings and talked about just the words we use when giving feedback, and I think it was helpful.
Yeah, I think that's great. And sometimes I get students that will write to me and say, wow, you're this and this and this. I have this other teacher that struggles with, those kinds of soft skills. And, I always reply to them and say, they're not going to know unless you tell them. Like, you need to communicate with them and ask. And I think so many times we just, in our minds, think, yeah, they were offensive, or they're not living up to their bargain. They said they do this, they didn't do that. And we just assume that they know, right? We just think, well, they knew they promised that and they didn't do it, so there's no reason. But again, we go back to the conflict. We need to just make sure that it's out in the open. We need to make sure that it's talked about. And sometimes those are hard things to talk about. I think it's easier to say, to correct someone if they're giving hard skills, communicating wrong information. It's easier to say that than to say, you're a little bit hard in your communication with your students, or your communications with other ones. If you could soften it up a little bit. And by communicating through emails and words, it's sort of hard. We have to read things a couple of different times to make sure that it comes out the way we think it. And I know if I'm in a hurry, I never send an email in a hurry. I write an email in a hurry, and then I go back and I read it, and I think, because hurry sounds like angry, right? Frequently, because you just sort of blurt out what's the most important, and then you just need to go back and make sure that it says exactly what you're thinking and not necessarily what you're saying. Yeah.
And I've done that. I look back and say, oh, that was an email in a hurry. And I don't like to type, so last year I've started to give back, of course you can do audio, video comments back to students, but also to my other instructors. I'll send little video casts or this, and for me, it's just, I can communicate much better, and they can understand my voice and what I'm trying to say than typing.
Yeah.
It's just,
Yeah.
the way life is. And so I do that a lot. Obviously, I send emails too, but when there's something to be shared, I'll do a screencast-o-matic or something like that,
Yeah.
or something else, and send it out.
Good.
It seems to work better
Good.
communication.
And silence is often misunderstood as well. So sometimes if I'm not going to get back to something, or I write it in a hurry and I don't want to send it in a hurry, I will send a quick email saying, or a quick whatever saying, hey, I'm in the middle of something. I haven't forgotten about you. I will get back to you tomorrow. You can expect an email later tonight or tomorrow. So we just need to make sure that all of those that are soft skills communication are what we're expecting. So the next one is watching out for performance peaks. So virtual teams tend to reach their peak at about a year, and then they either level off or they start to decline at that point. And so, BYU-I does a good job at checking statistics and making sure, and having us do surveys and, all of those reflection kinds of things to make sure that we are where we're supposed to be. So we just need to make sure as leaders that we're checking where we are, and then making sure that we're not declining as members of the team. So these are the warning signs. Sometimes it means that team members get along so well that they're not as productive as they should be, because they spend their time chatting with other people or working with you or corresponding with you, but then you get feedback that they're not corresponding with their students, or they're not corresponding with the other team members. There's apparent lack of direction. So team members need to be reminded pretty frequently where we are, what our goals are, why are we going there. They don't commit to adequate time to the team, and so they have enough time. And this is a hard one, because I know I teach 2 classes, and it takes a little bit of time to do all that, and then sometimes I look at the other stuff that I need to do as far as administration or with other teams, and I think, wow, that's more time. But we need to make sure that that we understand that this is a sign of healthy teams. Healthy teams communicate with each other. And again, I go back to, if they're communicating with each other, all sorts of things are going to fall into place. You're not going to have as many problems with other things if you're making sure that they're communicating and the team members get along.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So are you referring to an individual's productivity or the teaching group productivity peaking at about a year? Because in my teaching group, I haven't had, I've only been in TGL twice now, and I've had a huge turnover. I haven't been able to see people
For a while.
more than one semester at a time. And so are we talking about them as an individual, and at the 1 year mark we need to keep an eye out for how they're doing as an instructor, or are we talking about how they're doing as a member of our team and the interaction there? I guess I'm
Yeah, well, I would say both. I really think that both are intertwined. I think if they're actively, working together as a team, they're going to be doing better in their particular teaching. So so that's a good point. So I would say, if there's a lot of turnover, if there's not that way to gauge, then definitely semester by semester, the beginning of the semester versus the end of the semester. And we have a tendency sometimes to not finish strong, and there needs to be that little pep talk around midterms, and or we just have a few more things left. Let's still keep going. But again, communication amongst the team is going to encourage that group. They're going to want to do better because they have others. There's engagement. There you go. It's going to encourage engagement. So does anybody, and these are the things: clearly define team roles and accountabilities, review and refine team processes regularly, exam levels of team performance, and then based on outcomes, we need to make sure that the information we're giving in our meetings relates to what's in need. So if everybody's doing really well on soft skills, there's really no reason to teach on soft skills because everybody's doing great. But that could be something that we celebrate as a team success. All right, let's go on to 5, communication. So, electronic technology, it's made virtual teams possible, but it's not a substitute for human interaction. And so as leaders, we need to make sure that we bridge that gap. So the warning signs is that the team communicates poorly, they're not engaged, and they don't pay attention during virtual meetings. If you had those people that checked in at the beginning of the meeting and then you're wondering if they're still there because they haven't participated all meeting long, and they may be grading during that time and sort of half listening, half not listening. What do you do about that? What kinds of things have you guys either experienced or done? Yes.
I know sometimes we have conversations going, like, I've had TGLs before I was a TGL that says, like, I want you guys discussing this while we're presenting. So there's like a little conversation going, and you can see who's participating because their name pops up.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you get good ideas. I mean, it's not like just a way to catch people.
Yeah.
I know I'm guilty of sometimes.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've seen. Yeah.
Put my baby down to sleep.
Yeah.
I'm guilty.
And I've definitely done that more. I find myself doing that more when the team lead, when I've had a team lead, or not necessarily at BYU-I, but when I've had a team lead that wasn't creating a good atmosphere. I mean, when I didn't have a relationship with the people that I was working with, I've actually supervised online, not necessarily BYU-I, but I've supervised online teams and I've been a part of online teams. And I find myself falling into these warning signs a lot more frequently when we're either not getting along as a team or I'm going to say not getting along as a team. Either we don't like each other, there's been conflict that hasn't been resolved, or else we don't know each other. I mean, I have nothing to say because I don't know who anyone else is. Yeah.
Well, one thing I really like to do that kind of helps them engage and pay attention is I like to have a kind of a best practice meeting where I do hardly any talking, but when I do their course visits, I know one great thing that each person is doing, then I ask them to present on that, and usually they're pretty engaged because they're really excited to find out what so-and-so is doing, what so-and-so is doing, and because it's everyone's best, it's giving everybody some good ideas that they can use in their classroom.
Yeah, I agree. And when you highlight, I had a team leader at BYU-I that did a best practices, and they didn't have us present. She didn't have us present, but she took things from each of our classes. And I don't know if she represented everyone. I know I was represented. I'm assuming she did. But yeah, you sort of perk up and you're like, oh yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks for, that, for highlighting me or for being, and it does make everyone feel like they belong. Did you have something that you were going to say earlier?
I was just going to say that thinking about BYU-I, and we usually meet online on Adobe. I think a lot of us do that. I just make it interactive from the very beginning, that everyone, you can see who's there, and you let them know, we're going to talk about this today. I want to hear from everybody. We'll start at the top, or we'll start at the bottom, and I'll go first, give them a few minutes to think about it. And everybody seems to chime in and get really involved, so it seems to work.
Yeah, that's great. When I think of a high touch, a high touch environment, my mind immediately goes to Adam and Eve, and how, I think of this frequently, like how did they do it? Because they were visiting with God all the time. I mean, he was right there. He was accessible, and then they went to went out of the Garden of Eden. And what kinds of things did he do to create so they knew that he was there? You guys ever thought of that? What did God do? We want to emulate the Savior. And so, it's a hard question, right? We don't talk about this in Sunday school. These are sort of hard questions about, how do we emulate the Savior in all aspects? Do you have any ideas? Well, and I'm not saying I have all the ideas, but I always think about how, he made sure that they were watched over. He made sure that they knew that he cared. And he created a way for them to talk to him. Not necessarily face to face as they had done before, but we have prayer and we have those kinds of things that we're able to communicate with our Heavenly Father. And, we know sometimes we may get into a rut and think, are my prayers like bouncing off the ceiling? Like, I don't know if he's listening when I'm, sometimes saying the same things over and over. But then, he always sends those little answers and we go, yep, he heard. Or even, he knows what I need and he knows how I need it to be. So we never doubt that he cares about us, even though he's not in the room with us. And, we're not going to be perfect. We're not going to be as the Savior is to us. We don't have the capacity to be as perfect as he is, but we're in a similar situation where we can't be in the same room as those that we're leading. And so we need to make sure that they understand that their messages or their needs or their questions are heard, and that we care, that we truly, truly care about them, and that we're on it, that it matters to us if it matters to them. So some ways to do it, to leverage synchronous tools. So instant messaging, and I know that can be sort of a hard thing because we're not all on our computer at the same time. I've thought often it would be nice if we had a group Facebook or something. I know, some members of our team want to post pictures and it's not always easy to do. Have you guys had that? Has anybody had it? I know that there's classes that have Facebook groups, but have you had experience with teams having that or having any kind of interaction outside of just the monthly meetings? Yes.
It's not me. I didn't do this, but I heard someone did like a book exchange with their group.
Oh, cool.
And they were assigned someone, and then they mailed them their favorite book, and then they read it, and then they can talk about it with the person that sent it to them.
Wow, that's awesome. Is that at BYU-I? They did that? That's so cool.
One of our meetings.
Yeah,
Was it you?
it wasn't me. I don't remember which member of our group did it, but it was a great idea. Yeah.
So what other kinds of things? I know we have one member on our team that's really outgoing and really friendly. And early on, semesters ago, she reached out to me right after we did the introduction, and she said, "You and I have a lot in common, and we're going to be friends." And she said, "Here's my phone number." And she wasn't the team lead, but honestly, it came. Sorry. Oh, gracious, I apologize. It came at a time that I was just starting, and I was feeling really alone. And I remember running out to my husband and saying, "I have a friend at work. I have someone, and we're going to be friends." And I'm not really that kind of person. I'm not the kind of person that needs a lot of friends. I'm happy with myself and, and the things that I do, and I find a lot of interaction with my kids seems to be enough for me. And so I was surprised that it had the importance that it did have to me. I was really surprised because I didn't think that it mattered as much as when it happened, and it truly, truly mattered to me at that point. So I think we need to, make sure, like, utilize the tools. She and I, we, text back, and then she's, brought some other people into our group and said, hey, this is a new friend I just found. And so then all of a sudden we're, a bigger group, and it's just been such a huge difference between when I was first working at BYU-I and now. I feel like I have people in common. I feel like I can, have people I can reach out to. Not necessarily that have all the answers, but somebody that's going through the same thing that I'm going through. So make sure that there's a sense of shared space, even though it's hard to have shared space. Again, we go back to the water cooler idea. Just make sure that we as leaders have a place where we can virtually be together. We can feel together even though we're not completely together. Wider use of video conferencing, and I know we say that all the time with our students, but also it matters, I think, to our teachers, or just maybe even a little email saying, I was thinking about you. I do that all the time with people, and I never get down to write that email or the text message. I think about it, and they go through my mind. I think, I wonder how that did, and I don't. And I finally, a few years ago, I just had to say to myself, if I think about it, I'm doing it. I'm doing it that second, because if I wait to say thank you or I wait to say it, it never happens. And so I just take those moments as they come, and I utilize it. So the last step is engagement. So leadership, statistically, leadership is the most important factor in team performance. So how they perform, how successful they are, the most important factor is who their leader is. So the warning signs for having a lack of leadership is the team isn't performing to their objective, their deliverables are delayed or of poor quality, the relationship between members and the leaders aren't strong, the leader's not clear about the team's direction or purpose, and the team leader pays more attention to who they get along with or who they're in close proximity or have something in common with than they do the whole team. So what kinds of things have you guys found? We have about 5 minutes. Before I show you how to implement this, what kinds of things have you guys found have been good? What have you seen or done as leaders that have been useful?
One semester, several of us got together and did the same goal together.
Oh,
Like a
yeah.
group goal within our teaching group, and we named it a catchy thing, and then we just were keeping each other accountable the entire semester.
That's
And
awesome.
that was the best I've ever done on my goal, and they did really well as well, just because we all had the same thing in common.
What goal was it? Do you mind me asking?
This was back in the old 2.0 where our class had a lot more discussion boards. We don't have that many anymore, but we called it 311, where you had to each day do 3 posts, and one was this and one was that, and so we knew what it was, and we just all did it.
Wow.
So it worked really well, and we were engaged because we all were working on it together.
That's good. Has anyone else done the same goal? I think that's a smart idea. I hadn't thought of that. That's a really... Yeah, not everybody. Yeah, but if... Yeah, but if you throw it out and people can... Because I know every semester I sort of think, there's several goals I could pick, and I think, well, which one do I pick? So, yeah, so maybe if you had one, people would be more inclined to choose that one that semester, but that's great.
Someone shared in another class today that they did like a team, like they had one other person in their group that had access to see their course. So they did peer, what was it? Anyone? Was it peer mentor? Or
Oh,
they could
yeah.
like see like, oh, I like that you're doing this, I like that you're doing that, and so they were like involved because they were watching and seeing what the other person was doing instead of just the leader, assessing all the courses. So
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good idea. I did, well, when you start, right, you have access to your TGL. And so I would go on there, and she had a lot of ideas that that had not even occurred to me. Yes.
One thing my Amos during the semester that I really like is she puts her weekly emails. When she sends out the weekly email, she says, my weekly email's on our group space. And then we have to go to the group space to read it. But I like it because in her thing she says, and if you've read it, please post one thing about X or one thing. And it's led to some really good kind of
Yes.
follow-up conversations based around her weekly emails, and it kind of forces us into that community space and more interaction with each other and with her, and it's been pretty useful.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, just getting to that community space. Sometimes I'm not as good as I should. I have to have an email reminder to go check it before. So it's not on my, list of to-dos every day. So, good. And then the last one, what time is it? Okay, so putting them in actions. So setting clear goals and directions. Engage in team members and development. Provide time for periodic face-to-face meetings. Emphasize common interests and values. Provide timely feedback. Be responsive and accessible. Integrate new team members. Teach importance of conflict resolution. And then again, celebrate achievements and successes. So I think the most important thing is that we need to constantly reevaluate and we need to reassess. So just because it's working good one month or one semester or the first half of the semester doesn't mean it's successful every time. And so we just need to keep our hand on the pulse of it. And if we keep our hand on the pulse, then we understand how that works. We understand what the rhythm is. We understand, what's normal. And so if the pulse changes either direction, then we're aware of it. We're aware of what's going on and how we can change as well to sort of lead in a different direction or lead in a different way that's needed. And I think, in all of my studies, that's my biggest takeaway is that we need to be watchful. As leaders, we need to make sure that we're paying attention and things don't get so far out of whack that it's hard to pull them back. Because if we make little incremental things as they're needed, then we end up with success. And sometimes we get to the end and we think, how did we get there? Because it was just little things that we did, and we didn't have the huge wide turns and changes. We just did little, but those little changes kept us on the path and kept us going to our final goal. I'm so grateful. I know, personally, working for BYU-I has been a huge blessing in my life. And, I'm not saying everything's easy or everything's fun or I, jump to my computer and say, yay, I get to grade midterms. That this is the most awesome 2 days of my life is grading all these midterms. But I think that it's such a blessing to me to work with people and have students that, that emulate the gospel and bring the gospel into my everyday environment. And everyone has so many blessings that they're willing to share and so many capabilities that they're willing to share. And it's great to see the times that we provide an opportunity for them to share them. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.